It's great to be in the SEC. Welcome back to the reaction and rankings episode of the SEC Recap Podcast. You smell that? It smells like football is back. Week 1 came and went with a bang, and it's not over yet. I'm recording this late Sunday. We still got LSU, USC to play here just inside of a couple hours, but I wanted to come out and hit the week quick with the updated power rankings and a week 1 reaction. There is a lot to get into. But first of all, wherever you're watching, however you're listening, on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, however you prefer to chug your podcast, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to smash that like, that thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. Don't forget to follow on Twitter or X at SEC Recap. And as always, you could donate to the pod. I've got the QR code right up here. Don't forget to also check out the merch. Got some new sweet merch. I'll promo some of that a little later on. Bonfire.com/store/SEC Recap. That's all the usual stuff. Let's get right into the meat and potatoes of week 1. So we are going to cover power rankings. The model has updated. I have updated the model as expected. There was a lot of shuffling around. I've already posted it on my Twitter, so if you haven't seen it, go check that out. Also playing around with some more advanced analytics this season with some EPA metrics and some cool summaries and graphs and things like that. I'm going to break all of that down just a little bit more in depth. You know, this is one of those episodes I never want to go longer than like 20, 25 minutes. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to pop on, talk some power rankings, you know, shoot the breeze, react to the week 1 games. And somehow this always ends up going like 45, 50 minutes. So I'm planning on having another episode coming later, previewing some games. We do have some SEC on SEC crime happening this coming weekend. South Carolina travels to Lexington, so I want to do an episode and preview a little bit of that. Well, how about this? Let's just jump right into the rankings, and then I can kind of react to the games as we go through the rankings. So let's just do that. Without further ado, now, as I go through these, we will also see how the what changed, whether a team dropped or jumped a few spots compared to my preseason rankings. So if you're not watching on YouTube, head on over there, check this out. I do have my graphics up on the screen. It just makes it more fun, makes it more engaging. Gives you a nice visual. You can also watch it on the YouTube podcast because they have a video podcast feature. You can also watch it on Spotify podcast because they have a video podcast feature as well. So a lot of avenues to check that out. Please head on over to any one of those platforms and do it. But if you're listening on Amazon or Apple, God bless you. I appreciate you too. So starting at number 16, really no change here from last week is Vanderbilt Commodores. Now, Vandy had a great win, 34-27 overtime win. Virginia Tech, Diego Pavia, a lot of people buzzing about him. Really kind of the story of this game. He was fantastic. Vandy led, I think, most of the game. Virginia Tech tied it late, sent it to overtime. Vandy had the tutty in OT to win it. I was down on Vanderbilt in the first episode, in the preseason rankings episode. This was not a game I expected them to win. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of people kind of, doing the round of I told you so's on social media. I don't think they picked Vanderbilt to win this game. Maybe they picked Vandy to cover or something like that. But this is a big time win for Vanderbilt. I'm just going to give it to them, man. Hats off, tip of the cap, they might say, to the Commodores. I mean, it was awesome. This gets you, I was struggling to kind of come up with that 4th win to get to 4 wins on the season. Well, this was one. This is a big one. And they might even compete with a few of these other SEC teams later on in the season. Now, it's just week 1, so I'm trying not to overreact. There's a lot of that already. I'm just trying to give a calm, very even-keeled, run-of-the-mill reaction. But There's no way that you could spin this other than it was a phenomenal win for Clark Lee and Vanderbilt. Really, really solid. It reminds me of a couple years ago when they beat Kentucky and Florida. Nobody was expecting that. So kudos to Vandy clocking in at the 16 spot. Now this one we got to talk about. Number 15 here, Florida drops 3 spots to 15. So let's just pause here a minute and kind of react to this. Miami beats Florida 41-17. This game was in the Swamp. The point spread was like 2.5 points. I actually picked Florida to win this game at home. I thought that environment in the Swamp, I've seen it before. I've been there before. It's incredible, and was not expecting what transpired to transpire. Cam Ward came out, played lights out, 385, 3 touchdowns. It did not look like the crowd had any effect on him whatsoever. Mario Cristobal and Miami get a huge rivalry win in the state of Florida. Now, Florida still has to play Florida State. I think they also play UCF. Let me double check that. Yeah, they do. They play Central Florida in week 6? Coming off of a bye week. But they play all the Florida schools this year. Florida's schedule, by the way, does not get any easier. That Miami win was so needed. I mean, sure, you got Sanford next week. Then you got Texas A&M, whose defense, by the way, looked amazing. Graham Mertz concussed. What's his status? We don't know. DJ Lagway had to come in and replace him. He looked shaky. I mean, you saw some good things, but I'm not going to say he, was phenomenal. Then you got to go to Mississippi State with the Clang-a-Clang. I don't know, man. Then you got Central Florida at Knoxville. You got Kentucky coming to town. Kentucky looked pretty good. Brock Vandagriff looked pretty good. Then you got Georgia, the neutral site. Texas in Austin. LSU coming to town. We'll see what they look like here in a few hours. Ole Miss, Florida State. Dude, if you're a Gator fan, I feel for you. Not really. I hate Florida on a personal level. For this purpose of this podcast, I'll try to be more objective. But the calls for Billy Napier to be fired are out there. I mean, it's an open secret at this point. A lot of people even want Scott Strickland gone. It's a rough time in Gainesville. That was not the opener that you wanted. Hey, look, a loss in a close one, losing by a field goal in the fourth quarter, I think you'd say, hey, based on what we saw, that's some positive momentum. But that's not what we saw. What I saw was Florida's offensive line looked like Swiss cheese against that Miami defense. To Miami's credit, they look like the best team in the ACC. I'm going to try not to overreact to that too hard, but they do. I mean, that looked like a team that's going to compete for the ACC with who? Maybe Clemson. I don't know. Maybe not Florida State, but that was a good Miami team. Florida was not there. Florida was not there. I mean, Montrell Johnson, I think, let me pull up the box score here. Yeah, Montrell Johnson, 11 carries, 100 yards. He was super productive, had a long of 71 yards, ripped a big one, 1 touchdown. But Graham Mertz, 11 of 20, 91 yards, 1 interception. DJ Lagway, 3 of 6, 31 yards, an interception. Let me just go ahead and jump on over to this here, my QB ratings. If that's, hopefully y'all can see that. No, it's kind of small the way I have it split screen here. Let me make that a little bigger. So these are my quarterback passing efficiency ratings. So for perspective, can I get that to readjust there? This is great podcasting, by the way. Just can't get all the names in view. I don't know what's going on. It's got the stats. You just can't see the names with it. Okay. Maybe I'll just interpret here because I don't want to waste any more time. So highlight his name here. Graham Mertz. He's down here. So relative to all the quarterbacks in the SEC, in terms of my ratings, Jackson Dart was at the top with a 212.31 passing efficiency rating. Graham Mertz is all the way down here, number 13, with a 93.54. Like I said, 11 to 20, 91 yards. Had the interception, no touchdowns. He got concussed. It was ugly all around. And so there's, with all the optimism and the positive talk from Gainesville on the offseason, there's just, I think, more questions now than ever. And a lot of people seem to think they have the answer, which is fire Billy Napier. I don't know who you get. A lot of people are saying throw the bag at Dan Lanning. I don't know that Dan Lanning's going to leave Oregon for Florida. Maybe. He's got a ton of money at Oregon right now. I haven't heard Mike Gundy's name mentioned. God, I don't know. Maybe John Gruden's an option too. Who knows? But anyway, not a great home opener for Florida. They do get a cupcake next week, you'd think, in Sanford, but then they start the most brutal stretch in college football this season. So you got to hope it gets better for the Florida Gators. I don't really know who else you have at the number 14 spot, other than South Carolina Gamecocks. That's where my model puts them after struggling at home versus Old Dominion. I think they had a touchdown late to kind of take the lead, but that game ends up 23-19. Lenore Sellers, again, not that great. He's at number 12 in my rankings, my quarterback efficiency rankings for the weekend, 85.5, 10 to 23, 43.5% completion rating, only 114 yards, no interceptions, but also no touchdowns. So it just looks like that's not all on him. Quarterback dictates a lot of the game, but so does what you have on the offensive line. And whether it's coaching, play calling, personnel issues, I really don't know. But Old Dominion was within a net's fart of beating South Carolina at home. So if you're a Gamecocks fan, I don't know that Shane Beamer is a longer-term option for you. And I've said that for a couple years now. After that, 2022 season, I said it's a fluke. It was a fluke, and I caught major shit for that. But it's looking more and more like I was correct in the long term. They open SEC play at Kentucky this weekend. So we're going to dive into that game a little bit more. But if I'm picking it now, South Carolina is a dog on the road at Kentucky. I did not see the same issues with the Wildcats that I saw this weekend with South Carolina. So South Carolina in for a tough road stretch or a road matchup here in Lexington, followed by LSU at home. So we'll see what happens with them. On to number 13, jumping 2 spots in the rankings, Mississippi State. Now, I think there's a conversation to be had here about the Bulldogs. I know it was Eastern Kentucky, but they kicked the Levy era off pretty hot, 56-7. Things going well there in Starkville. 450 total yards of offense. That'll do it. They looked good on offense, looked good on defense. It's exactly what you want to see. They had 4 wideouts score touchdowns. Jordan Mosley, 5 catches, 104 and a touchdown. Kevin Coleman, 5 catches, 88 yards and a score. And Coleman also had 117 yards worth of punt returns. So, Bulldogs catch a spark. 500 yards of offense almost is a huge improvement over, what I can't even remember the coach's name last year. Zach, what's his face? More defensive minded guy. But I think that's why you hired Jeff Lebby. How many games are they going to win? I don't think they're going to overachieve. I still think they're going to lose the games I predicted them to lose and win the games I predicted them to win. I mean, Eastern Kentucky isn't a solid benchmark for like the grueling stretch that is SEC play, but it's a positive start, and you had to win that when you won that one in a big way. So hats off to the Bulldogs there. Good to see. Dropping a spot. Now, this is more just due to how the model is shuffling these numbers around. This doesn't mean I think less of Kentucky. I had them at number 11 last week. They dropped to number 12. Like I said, not an indictment on them. They were good. They had the game got delayed against Southern Miss. They end up with a 31-0 shutout. Brock Vandergrift looked great. Let me check out the box score here. Rushing game was not bad. Distributed the ball really well. Brock Vandergrift had 5 carries for 35 yards. He went 12 of 18 for 169, 3 touchdowns, had the interception. So he wasn't high on he's about middle of the road in my quarterback efficiency ratings. Number 8 behind Taylor Green, and just in front of Carson Beck at Georgia. But all in all, really, really good. Receivers, Macklin had 2 for 66. Dane Key, one of their studs, 3 for 60. Berrien Brown had 2 of the 3 receiving touchdowns, 4 catches for 28 yards, 2 scores. And then Jordan Dingle had 2 receptions, short yardage, just 3 yards total, but one of them was for a touchdown. So they took care of the ball. My biggest takeaway from this is it still just looked like Kentucky football. Nothing really stood out to me in a way that made me think like it's anything different's going to happen. Like I said, with Mississippi State, I think Kentucky's going to win the games they're predicted to win. They're going to lose the games they're predicted to lose. They still, just like to dominate possession, slow the game down for opposing teams, that kind of thing. Stoops ball. It just looked like solid Stoops ball, which, can't take anything away from that. They look good doing it. I think they'll handle South Carolina next week. Don't think they'll be competitive with Georgia. But then they get Ohio, followed by Ole Miss. So losses to Georgia and Ole Miss within their first 5, but I think they are going to pick up their first SEC win over the Gamecocks. Let's move on. Now, a lot of people are going to disagree with this, but this honestly feels a little more appropriate to me. Last year, I had A&M at number 8 or 7, maybe. But they dropped 3 or 4 spots this week to number 11. Now, they played a really good team in Notre Dame. So not taking anything away from them, but Connor Wegman did not look good. He really struggling. In fact, he is last in my efficiency rankings. Let me pop it on over here to show you. Got it highlighted here. 12 of 30, 40% completion rating, just 100 yards. Yards per attempt, 3.3. No touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Notre Dame, great defense, credit to them. But Connor Wegman was not really able to get a lot done. He was struggling. I tweeted about it during the game. I was like, he was overthrowing players, missing guys on routes. So don't know what to think of him. Defense, however, for A&M, really good. I think they're going to show up week in, week out. I was always really high. I was high on them in the preseason pod on the defense. They got a ton of talent. They just couldn't quite match point for point with Notre Dame. I did think the game would go the other way. It was a rock fight. It's kind of what I thought it would be. I just thought it would be Texas A&M getting that final score, getting that final touchdown, instead of Notre Dame. A&M has McNeese State. Then they go to Florida. That Florida game, even though it's a road game, looks incredibly winnable. I mean, I think A&M's defense is going to make it super tough on Florida. So I think they pick up an SEC win there. They get Arkansas at the neutral site. I think that could be a win. Missouri, that one's going to be an interesting one. That Mizzou offense, I don't know if A&M has enough defense to really slow down the Missouri offense enough, unless we see more from A&M's offense to suggest that they could compete with Missouri's offense. So I do think they can win at Florida. I do think they can win the neutral site with Arkansas. So 2 out of their first 3 SEC games, I do think A&M will handle business. Now, I don't have a number 10 here. because we're still waiting on the LSU game to play. I had a LSU at number 9 last week. But the new number 9 per the rankings, again, barring we'll see what happens with LSU here in a couple hours. We've kind of got a placeholder here till we see what happens. But Arkansas makes a huge jump. 5 spots. I had them at 14 in the preseason rankings. Their offense looked great, like great. Bobby Petrino did Bobby Petrino things. Like I almost think I think they scored on every single drive. So yeah, it was Pine Bluff, but I mean, you saw the offense do exactly what you wanted to see the offense do. Taylor Green looked awesome. He was not the most efficient. He was number 7 in my quarterback efficiency ratings, but 16 to 23 for 229, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He had a few carries as well. I don't consider quarterback carries or rushing yards in passing efficiency rankings, so that's why I'm excluding it there. But he looked awesome. Every aspect of that Arkansas offense looked great. Defense looked solid as well. What will it look like in SEC play? Oh, we shall see. But that's I think the biggest jump in the model's power rankings for this week. I don't think anybody jumped or dropped more than 5. So woo pig if you're an Arkansas fan. Now skipping this one, number 9 LSU. Like I said, LSU Arkansas. They're sort of holding that 9 and 10 spot. So we'll see what happens with LSU, how they look against USC. We'll run those final numbers tomorrow or tonight, late tonight after the game. Probably tomorrow morning. I'll be super tired tonight. Number 8, also making a jump 2 spots, Auburn. And I've got some new stats, like some team EPA, which is, the expected points added stat. Super popular now, even though it's been around a few decades. But, like per possession points added, how many points is a team expected to get per possession or per play that they have. Auburn looked really good. I'll be previewing that a little bit later on in the week, maybe on like that Wednesday, Thursday episode. Peyton Thorne was solid. Where did he come in? Number 2 overall in my efficiency rankings. Let's check it out here. 13 of 21 for 322 yards, 15.3 yards per attempt, 19.1 average yards on air, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was great. That Auburn receiving core, great. 73-3 over Alabama A&M. Look, all these FCS teams, I get it. Like, it's hard to really compare them. It feels like, 13 out of the 16 SEC teams were all playing FCS teams this week, but they took care of business. The offense looked much, much, much improved. They got some backups, their backup QBs, some work. Jarquez Hunter, 4 for 53 and a touchdown. Peyton Thorne had 4 carries for 49 yards and a score. Malcolm Simmons, wide out, 3 for 91 and a tutty. Perry Thompson, 2 for 82 and a tutty. Keandre Lambert-Smith, 3 for 80 and 2 scores. Cam Coleman, 2 for 62 and a touchdown. Sam Jackson, the 5th, 1 for 37 and a score. I mean, the receivers went off. It was killer. So if you're an Auburn fan, you got to love that. War Eagle over there in Auburn, down on the plains. All right, number 7, dropping a spot, Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma looked great. Again, this is just how the model shakes up the numbers here. Let's see. Don't have it pulled up. I thought I had it pulled up. It was Temple, I believe. They played the Friday night game against Temple, right? Yeah. Now, look, Temple's Temple, 51-3 for the Sooners, but, they gave up a field goal to Temple in the third. But, quarter by quarter, OU had 17-3. So that third quarter, they kind of stalled out a little bit, and then 2 scores there in the fourth for 50. Arnold, 4 touchdown passes. So everything's going according to plan down there. Super excited for that visit Tennessee will take to Oklahoma, the Josh Heupel revenge game. I think social media is going to be crazy leading up into that week. That should be an offensive fireworks show. Can't wait for that one. All right, dropping 2 spots at number 6, the Missouri Tigers. Now, honestly, like my gut feeling on the preseason rankings, I said this one feels, Missouri was at 4. I said that feels a little high for me. It was still factoring in some 2023 returning production and numbers. This seems to mesh a little bit more with my gut feeling. They're losing a little bit on defense. That offense still looks phenomenal. So 6 feels really good for the Mizzou Tigers. They took care of business against Murray State, 51-0. I do have Brady Cook in my efficiency rankings. Still kind of middle of the pack. Like he was solid. But 20 for 31, 228 yards and 1 touchdown. Let me pull up the box score here. So receivers were okay. They only had 1 passing touchdown. That was to Luther Burden. He was 3 of 39. They did get a lot of people some playing time in this one, so you kind of expect those numbers to be skewed a little bit. It was done on the ground game. They really distributed the ball. Nate Noel, 11-48 for 1 touchdown. Marcus Carroll, 6 for 35 and a touchdown. Brady Cook likes to use his legs, 4 for 22 and a score. And Jamal Roberts, 3 touches, 8 yards, 1 touchdown. So big ground game for the Mizzou Tigers. Number 6, I think a good spot for them. No change over last week. Ole Miss. Now they look great. It was Furman. It was the Furman Paladins, 76-0. But Jackson Dart, by the way, was my number 1 overall on the week. Or came in at number 1 on my passing efficiency rankings. 22 of 27 for 418 yards, 5 touchdowns. What? It looks like money well spent on NIL and the transfer portal this year. Matt Jones, 3 carries on the ground for 68 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jackson Dart ran 1 in. JJ Pegues, I don't know how you say his name, 2 for 12 and a score. And then the receivers, guys. Trey Harris, 8. Not a misprint. 8 for 179 and 2 touchdowns. Caden Lee, 4 for 78 and a touchdown. Caden Priescom, 3 for 77 and a touchdown. Antoine Wells Jr., South Carolina transfer, 2 for 70 and a touchdown. You think they missed that guy just a little bit? Maybe just a little bit, Gamecocks. Daquan Wright, 2 for 15 and a touchdown. 6 passing touchdowns. Jackson Dart accounts for 5 of those. I mean, what else can you say? Ole Miss looks legit. However, my model still likes them at number 5 instead of moving up. But who does the model like at number 4? Rocky Top, jumping 4 spots up from number 8 in my preseason rankings to the number 4 spot. Now, Nico didn't have the highest QBR rating. He was excellent, by the way. He was so good. 22 for 28 for 314, 3 touchdowns. He only played the first half. He did not play a snap in the second half. So had he played just another quarter, guys, who freaking knows? But he was all the hype. Just go look on Twitter. See what people were saying about him on Saturday. He was all the hype you could possibly imagine. His name should be mentioned in potential Heisman candidates for sure. He was number 5 on my passing efficiency. I'll switch over to that real quick. Got it highlighted there. Great touch on the ball. Tennessee got it done on the ground as well. Let me switch over to some box score stats here. Chattanooga, 69-3 over Chattanooga. The Mocs are a respectable FCS team, but again, it's FCS, so how can you really tell? Gaston Moore, Jake Merklinger got some play. On the ground, though, Dylan Sampson, their guy, 12 for 124, 3 touchdowns. That dude's going to do it again, man. He a bad, bad man. Deshaun Bishop getting some run, 5 for 60 and a score. Cam Selden gets some touches. Khalifa Keith, 10 for 43 and a touchdown. So overall, 5 touchdowns on the ground for the Vols. Dante Thornton Jr., another big story, struggled last year. They tried to play him in the slot, didn't really work out. Started to move him outside late in the 2023 season. He started to shine, but then suffered the injury. He came alive. 3 receptions, only 3 catches, but for 105 and 2 touchdowns. Big-time playmaker there on the outside. Really what Tennessee was lacking all last year. Part of it was quarterback. Joe Milton just not accurate with the ball. A lot of overthrows. Not the right touch. Nico, though, that touch, spot on the money. Chef's kiss. Brew McCoy, 6 for 89. No touchdown. He came really close. He was right near the goal line. Dylan Sampson had to punch one in on the subsequent play, though. Chris Brazzell, the Tulane transfer, 5 for 59, getting some work done. Dylan Sampson coming back in the passing game, 3 for 29. Squirrel White, 2 for 22. Ethan Davis, tight end, 2 for 20 and a score. Caleb Webb getting some run. They played a lot of receivers, guys. Well, not counting Dylan Sampson, were their running backs who caught passes. But let me count the number of receivers that Tennessee got touches through the air. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 different pass catchers for the Vols over the weekend. So you love to see that. Defensively, Vols look great. That offensive line was great. Had a blocked punt for a score, so a defensive touchdown added in there as well. Hey guys, I want to take this time while I'm on the Tennessee Volunteers to highlight a new piece of merch that I've dropped over the weekend. If you head to bonfire.com/store/SEC recap, you can check out this beauty, the I Am a Believer game style jersey t-shirt, in the style of Nico Iamaleava's jersey. So rocket number 8 with the power T there on the front, kind of how their jerseys are. And on the back, I Am a Believer number 8. If you're not, I know on the podcast, it's going to sound weird if you're just listening, but head on over to the YouTube page or just check out the store, bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. Check out that one. That is a hot design. I've already ordered one for myself. So I'm going to be rocking that bad boy this week. But if you're not a Tennessee fan, guys, no problem. I've got something here for everyone. Another one of my favorites, the Big Doink Energy tee right here. Guys, show your love for Big Doink Energy with the Big Doink Energy t-shirt. I love Big Doinks. You love Big Doinks. We all love Big Doinks. So go pick up a Big Doink Energy t-shirt. Comes in short sleeve, long sleeve, hoodie, variety of colors. Check that one out. And then no matter what team you're a fan of, guys, I've got something for you here. Vanderbilt, A&M, Tennessee. Check out these designs, y'all. South Carolina, Mizzou, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, LSU, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida, Auburn, Arkansas, Alabama. I even do a few fun ones there, like some of the rivalry games, like the Tennessee Beer Barrel Challenge and the Michigan FSI Football Sideline Investigator t-shirt. Going over to the store, check those out. Long sleeve, short sleeve, hoodie, sweatshirt, variety of colors for every design. They make great gifts. A bunch of you bought them last year. You sent me pictures. I'm super grateful. I don't make a ton of money off these guys. I just do them for fun. I make stuff that I like and I think other people will enjoy. Several of you have bought them, like the hoodies, the long sleeve shirts. They look great. They're super comfortable shirts. So that nice soft cotton. So they wear really well, super comfortable, especially still while it's hot. you're wanting some for the cold weather, check out the hoodies as we get into bonfire season. Check out all the merch, bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. All right, moving on to the top three. No, I had this wrong here. Disregard this on the graphic. They didn't drop 3 spots. They dropped 1 spot to number 3. I had the Texas Longhorns at number 2. They dropped to number 3. Again, not an indictment on the Longhorns, just how the model was crunching the new numbers. They play, who did they play? Colorado State, respectable. They took care of business. They have a top 10 matchup with Michigan coming up in week 2. That'll be a great game. That game is in Ann Arbor, so we'll see how Texas travels. But that is one I will be plugged into. And because of the SEC on SEC matchups, a couple of the, like the Texas, Michigan, the Tennessee, NC State game, which is a ranked matchup. I'm super excited to see what the model does with the power rankings once we start to get some different opponent adjustments when they're not all playing FCS teams. Super excited to see how these numbers shake out next week. That means coming in at number 2, jumping a spot, the Alabama Crimson Tide. They looked great. Now, on my efficiency rankings, Jalen Milroe only attempted 9 passes. Let me pull it over here. So he's not really in my rankings. Like if you look at his efficiency ranking, it was 265, which would be the top efficiency ranking of all quarterbacks. But I filtered this only if you threw a minimum of 15 passes. So only attempting 7 of 9. That's a phenomenal stat line. 3 touchdowns through the air, no interceptions. But the next lowest attempts was Diego Pavia from Vanderbilt attempting 16. So I felt like you need a good baseline. 9 is not a solid baseline. He did have a 22.2 yards per attempt and average yards on air 28.9, but I just needed a higher benchmark to really fairly evaluate. So we'll see what that looks like moving forward. These will adjust week over week. That's not the sole reason for the ranking. Alabama really, let me go to them. Was it Murray State or Western Kentucky? Western Kentucky, sorry. Mizzou was Murray State. The other Kentucky team. 63-0. By the way, former Auburn quarterback TJ Finley looked 18 of 31 for 92, 2 interceptions. But what do you expect when they're playing in Tuscaloosa against the Crimson Tide? They look solid, man. Alabama got it done on the ground in a big way. 6 touchdowns on the ground. Justice Haynes, 4 for 102 and a score. Jalen Milroe, 10 for 79 and 2 scores on the ground. Jam Miller, 5 for 54 to score. Ty Simpson had a score. Backup QB Daniel Hill had a score. 6 tutties on the ground, 3 through the air. 2 went to Ryan Williams. He had 2 catches, 2 for 139 and 2 touchdowns. So your Alabama Crimson Tide really not looking like they missed a beat under Kalen DeBoer there, which means, drum roll, at number 1, unchanged, the Georgia Bulldogs. The Clemson game started slow, but it ended exactly the way I thought it would end. I said on Twitter, Georgia's going to skull drag Clemson, and they did. It was like, was it 34-3? I mean, how else would you describe it? A little bit of a rock fight in the end. Sure, it was close. I don't think Kirby Smart cared. I don't think Carson Beck cared. That game went exactly the way you thought it would go. Cade Klubnik, 18 of 29, 142, no touchdowns, just an interception. Clemson really, really lacking on the ground. I mean, they just couldn't move the ball on the ground. 22 carries for 47 yards. Meanwhile, Georgia, 27 for 169, 2 scores on the ground, 23 receptions, 278, and 2 scores as a team. So Carson Beck, kind of middle of the pack in my efficiency rankings. I'll pull it over here. Coming in at number 9 overall, but Georgia looked like Georgia. Georgia looked like Georgia. They got Tennessee Tech next week, and then they travel to Lexington to play Kentucky before a bye week that's sandwiched in between a road trip to Alabama. I think Georgia is going to be just fine. I think Georgia is going to be just fine. Now, that's the power rankings. Kind of recap it here. I'll go to my final. This is the graphic I share on Twitter. But Vanderbilt, Florida, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Arkansas. We'll see what happens with LSU. Auburn, Oklahoma, Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas, Alabama, Georgia. Now, just to illustrate before I close it out here, again, not revealing the underlying math of the model, but I'm pulling my model versus the ESPN's FPI, which is a really common metric used to kind of evaluate head-to-head matchups, not just across the SEC, but across all conferences. You can see that my model pretty closely mimics the FPI, especially in that 1 through 4 slot, in the 12 to 16 or 11 to 16. But as I said in the preseason pod, that 4 through 10, 4 through 11, that's where you're going to see a lot of movement. That's where my model really differs. The weighted factors, it factors in like your offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, special teams efficiency, which FPI captures some of that, but FPI doesn't capture some of the other metrics that I like to use, especially in an SEC schedule. So we're talking about head-to-head matchups here that have yet to be played. Those head-to-head matchups will factor in to a degree to this. So that's why you saw big jumps in like Tennessee jumping from 4 to 8, Mizzou dropping from 4 to 6, Auburn making a jump from 10 to 8, Arkansas making a big jump from 14 to 9, A&M dropping from 8 or so to number 11. So that middle is where we really see the shakeup. That's where my model really differs from FPI. If you were just to rank all the SEC teams from FPI, which by the way, a lot of people on social media do when they post their power rankings, all they're doing is they're going to ESPN.com and they're just pulling up the FPI and they're going, oh, Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Texas 3, blah, 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 blah. Right? They're not putting any effort or any thought. I actually try to give you something a little different than what most people are doing. I'm not an advanced analytics guy. I'm a remedial analytics guy, but I do try to run my own numbers in a little bit of different way to incorporate some predictors into the model that maybe aren't necessarily being captured by other metrics out there, ESPN's FPI being one of those. Okay. So just a little recap of my model there. Coming up later this week, y'all, we will do some week 2 previews. I will dive deep into some of my new analytics that I'm running, the EPA per play. They're not predictive by any means. They're more of a reflective snapshot, but they help kind of give you an idea of what you can expect. And as we go through the season, as we get into SEC play, we're going to start to see those be adjusted for top 10, top 25, and SEC relative play. So those are going to factor into the power rankings as well. Ladies and gentlemen, how do you feel about the power rankings? Do you agree, disagree? When you look at week 1, where do you feel that your team should be ranked? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to smash that like, smash that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, follow me on Twitter or X at SEC Recap. I will catch you on the next episode later this week to preview week 2 and deep dive into the matchups. Have a great week. I will catch you on the next one.